can you remember your most memorable Christmas? Was there a gift like you woke up one morning and you were like, I can't believe it? What was your like most memorable Christmas?
This is going to surprise you.
Okay, I'm ready.
And because it was so out of the ordinary, is why I remember this one.
So you're going to tell the story. Are you a kid?
I'm a kid.
Okay, let's hear it.
I'm probably, I want to say about 12. And my dad was out of work for a month or two before Christmas. And we were thinking,
things were already...
We didn't have a lot of money to begin with.
Yeah, things were tough when he did have work.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we knew, me and my brothers and my little sister,
sparse.
we're getting jack squat, man.
Mm-hmm.
And we knew that.
Yeah.
And you know, somehow or another, we were still, I don't remember being disappointed that Christmas was coming up or anything, but I remember coming down that morning and inside.
Coming down. Did you have a 2-story?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, we lived in all of our bedrooms were upstairs.
Okay.
Yeah. And by the way, it was a pretty good sized house that they paid $21,000 for.
Back in
70 something.
70 something.
Yeah. It must have been early 70s. Yeah. And but it was kind of a,
because there was 5 kids.
yeah.
So you had to have
a family of 7.
Yeah.
And we had a pretty big. The house was not big, but it was bigger than your average house. But it was also like beat up. It was like, you know, moving into a fixer-upper kind of a thing.
Sure. Yeah.
And we did a lot of that, by the way.
Yeah.
But I remember coming downstairs, and we weren't allowed to open anything.
Yeah.
Until Mom and Dad got
So
up.
was it the classic, like in the corner of the room, there's a Christmas tree and there's a bunch of stuff underneath it?
Yeah.
Okay.
But there wasn't a bunch of stuff. There was
Sure.
a few things.
Yeah.
But we did have a fireplace, a mantle, which we never had a fire in it because it wasn't set up for a fire. But we had a fireplace mantle, and they had hung our stockings. And peeking out of my stocking, I could see a Planet of the Apes action figure. Yeah. I think it was...
and that was in your stocking. That wasn't even one of the...
It was just, he was just looking over the top.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy crap. That's what I got for Christmas. And I was stoked.
Yeah.
Because it was Planet of the Apes had come out, and I remember seeing the movie, the original Planet of the Apes.
With Charlton Heston. Charlton Heston.
And I can't remember the guy's name, but he was the main ape guy. And I remember thinking, and he had on the green fatigues. I remember it vividly, seeing him.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm thinking, you know what? That's cool.
Yeah.
That's kind of more than I
would have guessed.
For.
Yeah.
I didn't really expect to get much. And when I saw that, I'm like, success. This is a great Christmas.
Yeah,
and I wasn't even allowed to touch it yet.
Yeah.
But I remember there was a couple things out. But one of the really cool things out was I'll never forget, it was like a rickety looking table of some sort with sticks sticking out of it.
Okay.
And I'm like, I don't know what that is, but it's got to be a gift.
It was a rickety, did it have like a blanket over the top so you couldn't see
what
was
underneath? No, it was just sitting there. But it had dowels that went across it, and like little pieces of plastic splayed into each dowel.
Okay.
And it turns out it was a foosball table.
Did your dad make it?
My dad made it.
He made a foosball table.
Because he didn't have any money, and he scrounged up
holy
dowels, plastic, and it was awesome.
That's so cool.
We played, and I remember thinking, this is the greatest Christmas, because it was a gift for all the boys.
Yeah. And you guys could all play it together.
We could all play
Dude,
foosball.
That's kind of making me feel emotional. That's awesome,
It
dude.
was. And I was thinking, my dad's not even...
He's not a handy guy
He is
either.
not a handy guy. He's the only guy that works on a car with a hammer. You know what I'm saying? That's not who he was. But I remembered seeing him out in the garage doing stuff with friends, like sawing and hammering, and I didn't pay any attention to it. I was busy living my kid life, you know?
Yeah.
But it turns out he thought, I got to do something for the kids. And he had built us a foosball table. And my 2 older brothers and my
he just
younger
put like
brothers,
little, like maybe wood blocks on there, and
he took dowels. He took these dowels and he sliced a hole in it.
Yeah.
And it had crammed plastic in, so there was a little flipper.
Yeah.
And there was 3 across the front, and then another. and if you stood too close, the guy would poke you.
Yeah,
You know, because it was it was
Yeah.
one of those deals.
Uh-huh.
But you could play it.
That's
And it had a hole
awesome,
at the
dude.
end where the ball would fly out onto the floor, and there was a little ball in there, and there was red, and it was this plastic. It was almost like like a plastic cup, kind of a thick plastic cup. If
Sure.
you cut it into squares, and you just these little kind of plastic pieces
That made the players.
that made the players, and it was a red team and a blue team. And I remember it was
It was
awesome.
the coolest thing ever,
And so
man.
finally, my family came down, and we couldn't figure out what the foosball table was until my dad was like, "It's a foosball table." We're like,
Oh.
so immediately we didn't care. We saw some other gifts under there, but we just thought they were socks or underwear.
Sure.
But there was one gift under there, and I remember.
So let's recap because
Yeah.
this is already sounding awesome.
Yeah.
You've got Planet of the Apes action figure. You've got a homemade foosball table that Grandpa Jerry
Yeah.
put blood, sweat, and tears
into it.
And there's still more under the tree.
There was a couple of gifts under there.
Okay.
And they started, and my family, Dad would sit under there and he'd say, "Curtis," and he'd throw into Curtis and he'd open it and we'd all watch.
How we do
That's
it.
how we do it.
Exactly how we
Craig,
do it.
my other brother.
Yeah.
Kyle, right? And so he's going through it, and sure enough, there's underwear and there's socks,
Yeah.
And we're like, "Thanks, Mom," and we're like, "Can we play with the foosball?" We were ready.
Yeah.
And then
You already called dibs who was playing first, I'm sure.
there was no question. This is my two older brothers were playing first.
Yeah.
And I might get to play.
Craig and Curtis were
if I
hitting it
want.
first.
Yeah. And that's okay because you could just and by the way, two people could play.
Sure, on each side. Yeah, you can go 2-on-2.
Sure.
Yeah.
So then, it goes, and I think we had gone through underwear first, and then we went through socks, and then there was a square box under there, and my dad said, "Kyle," and he tossed it to me, and I'm like, "What could this be?" And I opened it up, and it was a brand new basketball.
Wow.
And my dad had just recently he found a rim somewhere,
Yeah.
and he had screwed it onto a piece of plywood,
Yeah.
and he had put it on our fence, our chain link fence, so it's probably 6 feet high, and stuck a pole, and he had strapped the pole to the chain link fence, so if the fence blew, the goal would blow,
Yeah.
But I had a hoop, but no basketball.
But no ball.
And I remember friends would come over sometimes and bring their basketballs.
Bring their ball, yeah.
And we would play like crazy, but I didn't have my own ball at the time. And I remember shooting a soccer ball that had some patches come off, and I was just always scrounging for something.
Sure.
I remember shooting balls of socks into it. Mm-hmm. But then that morning there was that rubber basketball, man. And I'm like,
A rubber one, like
the cheapest version of any kind of basketball you can imagine.
When you bounced
yeah.
it.
Doing, doing, yeah.
Like a dodgeball kind of sound.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like. But I remember thinking, and I remember going outside. As soon as they let me, I ran outside, and I remember wearing shorts and high socks. This is 70s with stripes around the top.
Yep.
And
Larry,
I think I
Larry
had
Bird
some,
special.
I think I had some Payless shoe store tennis shoes. I can't remember what kind they were, and some short shorts back then, and a sweatshirt because it wasn't
chilly.
super cold.
Yeah.
But it was chilly. And I remember I went out there and I must have shot for 6-7 hours straight, just shooting, and just no net on the basketball hoop.
Yep.
But I remember thinking, this might just be heaven right now.
Yeah.
And it was, and I remember other Christmases, and I remember getting gifts, but nothing compared to that one where I realized we had nothing, and somehow my dad
Pulled it off.
And it's the most memorable Christmas I've ever, even with you guys, even with my own kids.
Yeah.
That one stands out as the most unique, and I wouldn't have called it emotional back then, but when I look back, I realize how hard it must have been on them.
Sure.
And how my dad probably fretted and struggled.
Yeah.
And I remember, and I told him years
Grandpa,
later.
when you think of dads back in the 60s and 70s,
Mm-hmm.
there's a couple of images that pop into mind, right? You got the workaholic that's like, well, I didn't have nothing, so them kids don't need nothing either.
Right.
But Grandpa Jerry wasn't that guy.
No,
right?
he wasn't.
He wanted everything for you guys, right? He wasn't that hard-nosed, like,
Yeah.
does that make sense? That kind
yeah.
of architype of like a dad who's just
Right.
like, whatever,
Right.
I'm feeding you, aren't
Come
I?
home, sit on the couch.
Yeah.
Have his wife be. That wasn't my
Yeah,
dad.
yeah.
no.
Grandpa Jerry, he wasn't going to work just to feed you guys. He was going to work to give you as much as he possibly could.
Absolutely, yeah. And he would come home and play football with us, and my dad was doing stuff with us all the time.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
So when he knew that you guys were going to miss out, it probably hurt him really deeply.
I looking back, now that I'm a dad, I can feel how it would probably feel that way.
Yeah.
But I had a chance to tell him later on in life. You know, when I grew up and everything, I said, Dad, I got to tell you, the greatest Christmas ever was that one. And it floored him. He's like, what? Are you kidding me? And I knew it was because we had nothing, and he came up with it. He figured it out. Him and Mom.
One day we're gonna bring on to this podcast maybe Uncle Craig,
my brother.
Right?
Yeah.
If Curtis ever comes to town, we'll sit him down. Right?
Yeah,
Any of them
do
ever
that.
come, we'll sit him down.
Yeah.
And the first episode we're gonna do with him is where we ask him about that same Christmas.
See if they remember it. That'd be awesome.
Okay, because I'm sure they remember the foosball table.
Yeah.
And I wonder if they had, their own rubber ball, or they had their Planet of the Apes toy. Because I would imagine,
I bet they did.
I would imagine
Something.
that on top of that foosball table, there was something else that just kind of like what you have.
Yeah, and it's funny too because it may not have impacted them like it did me.
Yeah.
You know, we see the world differently, even
Sure.
brothers from the same family.
Sure.
So I really don't know, but I do know that one stands out to me as the most unique, wonderful Christmas I ever had. And it's funny because I couldn't tell you what I got other Christmases. I mean, I know I got cool stuff, and I was always grateful, and I had great Christmases. But that one right there was the one that as soon as you say Christmas as a kid, that one stands out far and above any other Christmas I ever had.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Now I need to hear from you now because I'm curious.
Well, before I tell you because I have one that pops into my head.
Okay.
But I want to ask you a follow-up question.
Okay.
Do you have any memorable Christmases as a dad? You've told me about one, right?
Which one are you talking about?
The one where Mom wasn't able to participate quite as much.
Oh, because she was on the couch
Yep.
with the twins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about? Is that okay?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So one year, your mom was pregnant with the twins.
Yeah. So this would have been 2007, 6 or 7.
Yeah. So 16 years ago,
Yeah.
or a little bit over 16.
Yeah, because
years
they're
ago.
16 now,
'Cause they're
right?
16
Yeah.
now. And
2008 it would have been.
yeah, and your mom took care of all that.
Mom was the Christmas elf.
I never had to do nothing.
Yeah.
She would just she would go find the gifts.
Yeah.
She would.
It's the classic. You're just as surprised as we are of what's in the
Exactly,
gifts.
yeah.
Every year, right?
Every year.
Yeah.
And this year she was on bed rest, full bed rest.
The pregnancy was tough.
Yeah, with twins.
To say the
and
least.
she was a little older.
Yeah.
And so she couldn't do anything. She couldn't go shopping. She couldn't do this. She couldn't do that. And she sent me on all of it. But one of the things she wanted to do for all you guys was give you all your own personal blanket. And it was
Because that year she had learned how to make fleece blankets.
fleece blankets.
Yeah.
And so she had me.
Yeah.
You guys would go to bed.
I remember these blankets, right?
Do you really?
Of course.
Awesome.
Of course. They're the best.
Yeah.
So what you would do basically is you would take 2 different fabrics of fleece.
Right.
Right? So you would take, one that has like a pattern on it. And that's how she did it. It was one side had the pattern of something the kid really liked.
Right.
And the other was a matching fabric, but just a plain
Solid
color, right?
Yeah.
And you would lay them on top of each other, and then you would go around the corners and you would cut strips.
Right.
Right? And then after you had cut all the way around, you'd go and you'd tie the strips together.
Tie them in knots.
In knots.
And that would connect the 2 blankets together, and it was double thick.
So it was a double
soft,
fleece blanket. Yeah.
Warm.
Yeah.
Greatness.
Yeah. Mom helped me make one of those for Carrie when we were first dating.
That's awesome.
It's up in the top of our closet,
That's
actually.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So that was
Yeah.
one of my first gifts to my wife when I was dating her.
That's awesome. Well, I remember because I'm not Shelly, your mom was. It was therapeutic for her to sit down and sew or paint or cut fabric or do things.
Yeah.
That was therapeutic for her. She'd sit there for
What
hours.
else was therapeutic was for her to go through her mental Rolodex once like October, November hit and go, let me remember all of the little notes I've taken about each of my kids and what they might want.
She was good at that.
She was,
Yeah.
She knew.
You'd say something in February and
she
you'd
would
get
go,
it for Christmas.
Yeah.
And you had completely forgot about it. Yeah.
Yep.
But one of the things she wanted me to do, because she couldn't, she wanted these blankets for each of the kids. And, with, at the time, 4 of you, she had me go, I'd go over to different places and take pictures of material and bring them back to her, and she'd say, okay, get that and that.
Yeah.
And you need 3 yards of this and 3 yards of that. And then you guys would go to bed, and I would lay out these squares in the middle of the table and snip and tie, and she would oversee it. And she was watching because when you tie a square knot, it has to be a certain way. And
Yeah.
and it wasn't therapeutic for me. It was
Sure.
annoying.
Because I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
For anybody who's a Boy Scout or has ever been, right, a square knot is right over left and then left over right.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And if you do left over left and then left over left again, the knot looks janky.
And it undoes a lot easier.
And it undoes a lot easier, and it doesn't look very uniform. You'll see which ones are janky tie.
Correct.
Right? Which is important to Mom.
It's very
She's
important.
like, hey, that one's janky, that one's janky.
And for her, she could sit and do that for 8 hours straight and be happy.
Yeah.
For me, it was a chore.
Yeah.
But I'd do anything for your mom, so I sat there and and for 2-3 hours a night, and I would tie it right over left. Oh, dang it! And she'd see it, and I'd be like, and I knew how to do it.
Yeah.
But I could never. I mean, I was just
couldn't get in the rhythm
because it was a chore for me. It just didn't come naturally, and I just sat there night after night after night. I want to say for 2 straight weeks, just tying and cutting and tying and cutting, and I was like.
Yeah.
But I remember her just watching, and it just made her so happy. When I would finish and hold it up, and she'd say, "They're gonna love it." and I think you guys really.
I
did
do remember.
love it.
I wish I could remember. You know what I think it was? I think it was when we moved up to Idaho. Right? We moved up to Idaho when I was 11.
Right.
And when we moved up, that's when we started adopting Texas sports really hard.
Really hard.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, as a kid, a huge Rangers fan because I was a baseball kid.
Right.
But when we got up to Boise, that's when we said, "Oh, we're University of Texas fans," and this, and we started pulling because nobody up here was, so it was fun.
Right. It's fun to be.
And so I think if I remember correctly, I think that my fleece blanket was half University of Texas like helmets, so it was like that burnt orange, and the other side was a gray color to kind of match it.
It was.
I think I remember mine being that way.
I think that was too.
Okay.
And I think some of your other brothers were still little, so they had
Spider-Man and dinosaurs and stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, that was that Christmas and the first Christmas after your mom passed away. I remember that's stuck in my brain. I can't ever get that one out of my head either.
Yeah.
Because I was so worried. I mean, it was like, and I remember after Christmas was over, like we had opened all our gifts, and I think you guys had either gone home or weren't there anymore. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But your sister Chloe kind of broke down a little bit, and I remember just sitting with her and just loving on her. Yeah. And that's another one. And for not.
Can I tell you something weird?
What's that?
We weren't there on Christmas morning because the Mavericks were playing the Jazz Christmas in Utah.
And you went down. Yeah.
And so me and Carrie went to Utah for the Christmas Day game.
That's why you weren't there. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And me and Carrie had our own. We usually spend Christmas with you guys, right?
Sure.
Because we live in town.
Right.
That was the first one. It was just me and her, right? So we had, exchanged gifts in our hotel room.
Right.
The day before the game, right?
Yeah.
But I do remember feeling a little bit of guilt that I wasn't at home.
Oh, it's okay.
I know it was, but I remember thinking, I was like, dang, first Christmas after Mom passed away and I'm not even there. Right. And I'd bought those tickets before she passed, right?
Sure.
But I remember thinking, I was like, dang, am I bad? That crept in for a second,
Yeah. Yeah, but, that's really not how we roll around here.
Yeah.
There's no...
Those ones are memorable for other reasons.
Yeah.
Right?
But
that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about memorable for the dope reasons, right?
And there are some pretty... again, that's my kid. I'm curious about yours. You've got to have one that kind of...
There is one for sure that stands out, right? And hopefully I'm not...
Just say it. It don't matter,
No, yeah. So the first Christmas in Red Oak. Red Oak, Texas, right?
Yeah.
So for context, right, we're suburb kids.
Right.
Up until I was 9, maybe.
Yep.
So we lived out in the suburbs, and then...
I always had neighbors real close by.
All
that kinds of fun,
The kids across the street would come out, and we'd play catch in the street. We'd play wiffle ball, right? There was a community, right?
Right.
So we moved from Cedar Hill out to Red Oak, Texas, right? We get a plot of land, 5.5 acres, this, fixer-upper house that we're living on, right? And our nearest neighbor is how far away?
I don't know. 200-300 yards away.
Yeah.
Quite a ways.
And they don't have kids our age either.
No, they don't.
Right?
Yeah.
So...
Country living, basically.
Country living. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, anybody who, look up Red Oak, Texas, I don't think that they've suburbanized it since
they probably
we've
have.
moved away.
Everybody has,
right? That's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy to think
about. But everybody had 5.5 acres out there.
Sure.
At least.
Yeah, totally. So I remember this Christmas, we wake up, right? Same thing. There's a bunch of stuff under the tree. And you know one thing that Mom always did, too, was she finale'd
Oh,
gifts
yeah,
hard.
that's true.
Mom,
She had a big one for the end.
Mom, yeah. Mom,
And
like,
she would tell me which gift to give next.
like a daggum fireworks show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
she knew, she would like ramp it up, right?
like a fireworks show. That's
Yeah.
exactly what
That's
it
exactly
was.
what it was,
That's
right?
a gift, but the next one's better, then better, then
Yeah,
better, and then
yeah,
boom! Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
she would, you know,
Yeah.
she would even, I mean, dramatic with it a little bit. She'd hit you with a good one, and then hit you with socks and underwear, and then hit you with another good, you know, like.
Yeah. Or you
she
think
was-
you already had the finale, or she had
right? So
she had
I
it
don't
figured
remember
out.
I don't remember anything else I got.
Right.
And Mom pulls out the finale gift, right? And she puts it in front of me and Zach, and she says, "Open it together," right?
Yeah.
And we open it. You know what's coming.
I do.
We open it, and we look at it, and we look at Mom. Mom's grinning to ear.
Yep.
And we look at you, and you're like, right? And it is a GameCube, a Nintendo GameCube, right? Video games.
Video games.
Right? It was a Nintendo GameCube. There was an extra controller in there,
Yep.
right? So that we could play 2-player games. And there was 3 games. Super Mario Sunshine, Scooby-Doo Night of 1,000 Frights.
You still remember them?
The first 3 video games I ever owned, right? Super Mario Sunshine, Scooby-Doo Night of 1,000 Frights, and SSX Tricky, the snowboarding game.
Oh, I remember that one. I remember SS Tricky. You guys played the crap.
We
out of
played
that
the crap out of that game,
Yep,
right?
yep.
And can you revisit why you had?
Yeah.
If you were emojis, Mom was this one, and you were this one, straight line face, right?
Yeah, because I had seen kids just fall into traps of video games,
Yeah.
and I hated video games growing up.
Yeah.
Because when I was little, we got an Atari, and my little brother, who's 4 years younger than me, could beat me at Pong.
At Pong.
And I thought, if a kid 4 years younger than me can beat me at Pong, it's a stupid thing, and I ain't never playing video games. And I never played video games.
Because y'all
so
are sports guys, right?
We're sports guys.
Yeah.
We were out throwing balls, kicking,
Yeah.
running, whatever.
Yeah.
And so I was.
And if anyone 4 years younger could beat you at sports, you're like, well, he's going to the league.
Yeah, he's just that good. Yeah. But I thought, so I was really against him.
Yep.
And I fought Shelly right and left, and she begged me for
Yeah. And
that.
for
to let you
context
guys
too,
get that, yeah.
the Nintendo GameCube was the current generation.
Oh, it was the big
right?
deal. Yeah.
It wasn't like we got a GameCube when
It was a little purple square, if I recall.
Yep, a purple cube. Yep,
Purple cube.
It wasn't a GameCube when the Wii or the other ones were already
Right.
out.
It was
she
the-
didn't go back. She
it was
got
the
the
bomb.
current one, right?
Yeah.
Granted, the GameCube was the cheapest of the 3 major ones.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the GameCube rocked hard, dude.
Yeah.
It was so cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, and if I remember right, you got us a yard tennis set, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right. The GameCube was from Mom, and the gift from Dad to make sure
Yeah, you
that,
had some
that
activity
we had
out
some
there.
activity was this giant tennis yard set that you could set up in your yard, and
Right.
it had a tennis ball about that big that was filled with
Big,
air,
giant tennis
and,
rackets.
and big giant tennis rackets you could play tennis. And I remember playing tennis with you a lot outside.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. But yeah,
We had to dodge the anthill, the ant piles out there in the front yard.
Yep, because if you kicked the anthill, you were on injured reserve. Yeah, yeah, it was basically a rolled ankle. Same thing, right?
I remember after it would rain, we had a big giant front yard. It was probably an acre. Mm-hmm. After a heavy rain, you'd look out there and there would be, it looked like brown basketballs, half of a brown basketball all over the yard.
Yep.
And it was ant piles.
Ant piles.
And you and Zach would go out there and it was like running through landmines. Y'all would have to run in and out of them and avoid.
Yep.
Because if you stepped in one, you were in trouble.
Yeah.
If
you looked out the front window at the tennis set that we set
Yeah.
up, you're like, why is that at an angle like that? You're
Yeah.
like, because that's in that rectangle, there's the least amount of ant
least amount of ant piles. Yeah,
You're
yeah.
like, your yard is facing this way, but your
Yeah,
court is that
yeah,
way.
yeah,
Why
yeah,
is that?
yeah.
It's because that's the least amount
that
of ant
you had to
hills.
set it up strategically.
Yep.
To avoid the ants.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun.
But the GameCube was, that was a
about
game
that.
changer because we went over to it. It was the classic, like, you'd go over to other kids' house and you would play their Nintendo 64 or
Right.
whatever they had, right? And some friendships you would keep alive even if you didn't like the kid that much because they had the
There you
Nintendo
go.
64,
Yep, I
right?
gotcha.
And I don't think that was the case, but
Yeah.
that could happen, right?
Sure.
But now we had the GameCube, right? And we had these 3 games that we played in SSX Tricky, for anybody who knows. It's a snowboarding game where you do the most outrageous tricks and flips and stuff. And
I remember watching you guys play that, and it drove me nuts for quite a while.
But Mom's
thought
reason,
Yeah.
to go back, Mom's reasoning was they're not playing football or soccer or baseball.
They can't just go outside
in the
and
street
meet
anymore.
friends. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were probably driving her nuts during the day.
I bet you are.
Because we didn't have really nothing to do other than
go hunt snakes or whatever out there.
Which she wasn't going to have us doing either. Go dig a hole, like what which we got bored of real quick digging holes.
For sure.
But I remember that being super duper memorable and the beginning of the end because now I'm a huge game. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, he's never amounted to anything since then.
Yep, I've just been still playing the GameCube.
Still playing the GameCube.
Yeah, still trying to beat Zelda. Just kidding.
Is that one of the characters in one of those games?
Yeah.
That's how much I know about video games. I don't know anything about them.
You know, we had a Game Boy.
You guys
before
did
that,
get those. Yeah.
I think that was Grandpa Bobby, right? He would get Game Boys at pawn shops and bring them to us. And it was always like when you could, there's some kids that grew up and they would get stuck and they'd be like, "Hey, can you help me, Dad?" And Dad would get over that, but you never did. I don't think you even tried.
I couldn't.
Yeah. You
guys, if y'all played it for 2 minutes, y'all were better than I could be, ever. I couldn't figure out the thumbs and the ups and downs and the A, B, C, whatever the crap y'all were doing. I still can't play any video games.
Yeah.
Any of them. So, but that keeps me away from it. I don't have to worry about wasting time on that stuff. Yeah. There's plenty of other stuff to waste time on.
Do you know what happened the Christmas after that, the second Road Up Christmas? Do you remember what you guys?
I remember that one.
Tell us about that. That was the big finale, obviously, for that one.
Yeah, the second year we were out there.
Because we only lived out there, 2.5 years?
Maybe 2 years.
It's okay.
Yeah, we had 2 Christmases out there.
Yeah, for sure we did.
But the second year, I wanted you outside more, and so I talked your mom into letting me get you guys a go-kart. That was an off-road go-kart. And we had with those 5.5 acres
with a roll cage on top,
and everything, because she was afraid y'all were going to flip it over and kill yourselves. Which I was willing to take that risk. The fun, I knew the fun y'all were going to have. I knew the fun what y'all were going to have would be.
What if you shot me in the face?
Yeah,
that was a risk we were willing to take.
That's right.
Do you have a gun?
Yeah, I didn't get a gun.
Do you have a gun?
Right. Yeah, but I knew she didn't want that. That was one of those, and I even defaulted back to the year before. I said, I didn't want the video games, and it worked out,
Oh, dang. You know what? That's funny, because I don't think I've ever heard a story of you guys keeping score, but you kept score on that one, huh?
We didn't keep score. We didn't keep score with each other.
Sure.
As a matter of fact, with each other, we always tried to
give each other extra points.
Yeah.
That's a good,
right.
Keeping score is a step in the wrong direction.
It's a step in the wrong
marriage.
direction for you and your spouse.
Yeah.
But knowing that she had pushed for and got it and you guys loved it, I said, I really want to get them a little off-road go-kart, because if we build them a track back there, they can have time trials. They can have a blast. They'll meet new friends. Kids will come over to ride a go-kart.
Yeah.
Especially if you got your own track.
Yeah.
And so I talked her into it. I had to borrow a truck because we didn't have a truck.
Oh.
And I went and picked it up and brought it back, and you guys just were jumping and had a great time. And
do you remember when we rode it the first time?
I don't really remember. I remember you had a good time.
So here's the thing. You bought it ahead of Christmas. Right? Which I don't know what the plan was there, but you bought it ahead of Christmas. You probably were more excited about it than us because you knew you were getting it for us, right?
Yeah.
So near the other fence line, right? If the house is on this side of the property, on the other side of the property, there's this big giant shed. That was the previous owner had it, and it was filled with hoarding stuff, right? They basically hoarded that shed into, there was knickknacks and nothing worth anything in there, right?
Yeah.
But you had cleared out the middle part so you could store the tractor that we had that you could,
Right.
And so I remember one day my buddy Mason Lucero was over, right?
Yeah.
And so if you have Gary Phillips, right, I have Mason Lucero, right? And I didn't have Mason Lucero as long, right? There was a few years stretch right in the middle where I had Mason, right?
Yeah.
And Mason was my best friend, and he came over,
right?
And the fun thing was like, hey, let's go look in the shed, right? That was one of the activities, right?
Yeah.
Me and Mason would just go out to the shed and open it and look around and find stuff, right?
Right.
And so me and Mason walk out to the shed, and we open it, and the moment we open it, that bright yellow go-kart is sitting there.
You pre-saw it.
And this was maybe before Thanksgiving even.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And I remember him because it was like a slide door, and I remember him opening, and I think he saw it before I did because he was opening it, and he went,
yeah,
and like that wide-eyed, like,
right.
and he looked at me, and he's like, "You had told me that your dad was thinking about it, but it's here." You know what I mean? Because you had floated the idea with us, right?
Right.
And he was like, "It's here, Alec."
Yeah.
Right. And I remember going, "It is here. Like it's here. He did it. It's real. He said he was going to do it, and he did it." But then I remember being afraid, like, we're not supposed to have this till Christmas.
If I get caught, I'm in trouble.
Yeah, he's going to take it away from me if I'm.
He'll take it back.
Yeah, he'll take it back if I'm into it too early.
Sure.
Right. But my kid, when I was like, it's been out here for who knows how long. It's going to be here for another month and a half before Christmas, right? And so me and Isaac, not Isaac, his middle name is Isaac, and I always remember it because it says it on Facebook, right? So me and Mason, we're like, what do we do, right?
Yeah.
And so
it's a big decision in your lives right now.
Yeah, we're like, because we knew we weren't going to hop in and start riding.
No, that ain't happening.
No, that's the quickest way to get it taken away, right? So we look at each other and we're like, let's just pretend we didn't find it. Right? We'll go find something else to do.
Boy, you can't keep a secret though. How'd you pull that off?
I can't. Well, I didn't.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So we closed it, right? And we said, okay, let's go jump on the trampoline, let's go play.
Try to forget about it.
Try to do whatever, right? So we go back and we're doing whatever.
Though. It's in the back of your mind.
And I'm just sitting there like, it's out there, man. It's out there, right?
Yeah.
And
it's within, we can almost touch it.
Yeah, it's out there, man.
Yeah.
And so at a certain point, I was like, you know what? Christmas is weeks away. I'm not going to be able to do this. So I remember we have dinner or whatever. And do you remember I walk up to you and I go, hey, Dad, I just want you to know, right?
I don't remember any of this.
This is my 10-year-old brain. I'm trying to be real
cool.
Yeah, cool and what's the word? Tactful. Yeah.
There you go.
And I go, this is not me trying to ask you if we can ride it, because that's the other thing, right? That was, and Mom drilled that one into me. Don't nag me.
Yeah.
Right?
Of course.
Because if you nag me,
you ain't getting it.
You ain't getting it.
Right.
Yeah. There was one time I asked her to go to a bookstore, and we were on our way to the bookstore, and I said, are we going to the bookstore? And she turned around and we went home.
Yeah,
right?
she is hardline.
She was hardline with the nagging, right?
Yeah.
So I went, I think in whatever words my 10-year-old brain could muster, I said, this is in no way, shape, or form me nagging you, Father.
Right.
And I want you to know that. But I also want you to know that we did see the go-kart outside, right?
Yeah.
And if we have to wait till Christmas, then I'm even more excited for Christmas, right?
Right.
Thank you, Father. Right?
Yeah.
And you said, okay, cool, right? That's all you said, right? So dinner's finished. We still had that tennis court out in the front yard. We had the trampoline out in the front yard. And so me and Mason were jumping on the trampoline, we're goofing around, and then all of a sudden we hear, yeah! Right? And we look up and whoa, you come driving by with the go-kart, and you're peeling out and you're zipping around us, and we're like looking at you. You're going around us on the and you like, jump in, here we go, let's go, right? Yeah. And you brought it out that night, and the big reveal, we drove it. I mean, it was already kind of dark, so we didn't get to drive it very long. Yeah. I think Mason stayed the night, so we got to drive it all day the next day.
There you go.
And that was the year of the go-kart.
That's greatness,
in the Chinese zodiac, the year of the go-kart.
The Chinese, yes. It's between
the rabbit, the horse, the dragon, and the go-kart.
There you go. It's in that sequence, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's probably, I'm sure people have their own versions of this story, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Which you should discuss it with your friends or your parents, right?
Yeah.
That's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Because I really am glad I had a chance to go back and tell my dad, and I'm glad to hear your stories because I don't think you've ever really shared. I know we've talked about the cube before,
the GameCube, yeah,
because that was a big deal.
It was a big deal,
but I didn't recall hearing your take on, and I really don't remember any of that.
Yeah, the go-kart.
Yeah,
that's funny.
Yeah. I remember it was pretty cool. I remember going and picking it up, and I was really excited. And I can't keep a secret very well either.
That's probably why you just left it in the shed.
And I think it was one of those deals where
you're like, they'll see it eventually.
I stuck it in there when you guys were at school, and I was just going to leave it there and try to forget about it. But I was over the moon about giving it to you guys too.
Yeah.
Because I knew it was you guys were going to enjoy the crap out of it. It's good that Mason was there too, because then it's double the fun.
Yeah.
Because you know you're riding it with your buddy, you're taking turns.
Because I mean, me and Mason had spoken. We had talked for weeks about it. I was like, I think he might get us a go-kart this year.
Yeah, but you don't want to count your chickens.
Yeah. You don't want to nag and you don't want to count your chickens. Because that's the way that it doesn't happen.
Right.
Yeah. You know what else is funny? I remember going to talk to a guy about a go-kart, and you took me with you.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
You do remember that?
Yeah, because we went and looked at a go-kart, and it was a street go-kart.
The one he was selling was the one that you got us, like I said, bright yellow, roll bar, 2-seater, so you could whip around with your buddy.
Yep.
Right? We went to see for him, because I mean, this is way before Facebook Marketplace, where you were like looking at listings online.
Right.
Some dude just put it in the paper, I'm sure, that said, I got a go-kart.
Yep.
So you're like, okay, let's go check it out.
Yeah.
It was a street one-seater, no roll cage, about as dangerous as you can get.
Yeah, and some guy built it in his garage.
And he built it in his garage, and not only that, but he was one of these over talkers, and he literally just said, well, here it is, and then he talked at us for a half hour about it. Yeah. And you did that face you just did. You were doing the entire time. We're like, okay. You're like, as soon as I can end this conversation, we are out of here, because I'm not buying this thing. Right. So I remember that too. And so it was those things that whenever me and Mason would hang out, I would go, he's been talking about it, and he took me to look at one. So and believe me, Mason, as soon as it's there,
the writing's on the wall.
Yeah, you're coming over, and we're gonna whip that thing for hours, man. And we did. We did. That thing it wasn't at Christmas. It was before, and it was so fun.
But still, it was the big reveal gift that your mom always was good about. Yep. Great stories, man.
Yeah, totally.
Love it.
Cool. Well, we'll wrap it up for today, and we'll see you guys next time.
All right. See you later.